with some devotees, and Hare Krishna. And I'm just turning on my recorder. I was just meeting with some devotees who were going to get initiated. One of them is terminal, and one of them is terminal, and the other one's okay for now. Ultimately, everybody's terminal. By terminal, I mean terminally sick of cancer. So many people have cancer issues nowadays. For me, it's almost a constant thing. I can't even keep track of everybody who's suffering, and I'm seeing treatment, different types of treatment, more or less successful. But I'm seeing quite a bit of success in some treatment, and that's quite encouraging. Giving at least giving devotees some quality time to do service and to also advance in their spiritual practices. So that's the update, and I'm just seeing all the devotees who are there and watching. Okay, anyway, thank you for coming on. And I don't know, it says 38 participants. So do we have some particular topic we're talking about? I'm not particularly prepared, aside from, but we had a very nice. We had a very nice Janmashtami discussion or talk, and in evening, Janmashtami evening. Maybe some devotees saw that. Originally, it was, of course, in live. You had to be Brahmin, and you had to have read all of Prabhupada's books. So that meant we had a good, from the 600 devotees, we had a distillation of about 35, 40. And that was very helpful. And it was a good good meeting, good association of devotees. Siddhartha, what are you doing? Yeah, what's Siddhartha doing?
Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. I'm on my way from Kiev to Dnieper.
To where?
Is it okay to participate in conference on my way from Kiev to Dnieper, near railway station?
Where, you're going back to the temple?
Yeah. I just arrived from Vilnius. Now from Kiev to Dnieper.
Okay, yeah, I guess so.
Thank you, Maharaj. In half an hour, my train, I will in touch till I will be able.
Okay, you can switch off your microphone. Okay, so it was nice to talk to at least from my point of view, the sort of distilled crowd or distilled group of devotees, because then I saw that there was a real common interest and common comprehension. Okay, but let's see what we're going to distill here tonight.
We have a few questions, so maybe you might find a topic you want to talk about from within that. So Adokshaja Krishna Prabhu has a question.
But Adokshaja Krishna is driving a car right now. So I think he should just keep driving the car and forget about the question. Aside from the fact that his microphone's not turned on. Don't do anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. Okay, what's the next question?
I had a question. We know that Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of Krishna, and where his name, fame, form, pastimes, all of these things are discussed in there. And yesterday I was hearing how the nectar of devotion is the literary form of Srimati Radharani. So I was wondering if you could explain how that is, and yeah.
Who said that?
Chandramouli Maharaj.
Mm-hmm. Did he say where he heard it?
He didn't. Or if he did, I don't remember.
I'm sure it's from someplace. Anyone hear the source? Anybody in Manjari, you heard about that from anywhere?
No, I have not.
Anyways, Srimati Radharani is Bhakti Devi, and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is all about the science of bhakti. And I've not heard, so I'd be interested to see what the source is, but I don't rule it out, and it's not unfeasible that that's the case. But since I haven't read it and I haven't heard it, and then I can't say in any more detail. Radha Govinda, you heard anything like that? You have to turn on your microphone.
Yeah, I did not hear specifically about the nectar of devotion, but in Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava, this book by Bhakti Maharaj, there is a quote. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he's saying that usually we have kirtans, and kirtans represents Krishna, and Hari Katha or Krishna Katha represents Srimati Radharani. So in that sense, that all the time when we have kirtans, after the kirtan we have to have a little bit Krishna Katha, because Radha and Krishna have to be together. So in broad sense, we can say that the Shastras or the scriptures, they represent Srimati Radharani in that sense.
Yeah, that's good, thank you. Should I ask you to turn off your video, please? I see you wandering around Kiev. It's not necessary. Yes. In that sense, of course, in that sense, Srimad Bhagavatam is also Srimati Radharani. Okay, let's hear something else.
One thing Maharaj did say, Guru Maharaj says, is that the process of bhakti is explained in the Nectar of Devotion. So Srimati Radharani is the embodiment of bhakti. So that was one comment he did make with regards to Nectar of Devotion.
Yes, she's the embodiment of bhakti. There's no question about it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. Chaitanya Leela has a question.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Actually, my question again goes back to Krishna Sangati, and I wanted to ask, well, I'll ask one question right now, which is, sorry, this isn't related to Krishna Sangati, this is just a question about the gopis worshipping Katyayani Devi for a husband, and I was wondering why they would worship goddess Katyayani and maybe not Lord Shiva, because sort of common understanding in sort of Hindu culture that women go to worship Lord Shiva and he bestows a husband. So I was just wondering that process for them.
Lord Shiva at most gives bhakti, and he gives a husband, but Yogamaya gives Krishna. Husband and Krishna are two different things. Anyone can get a husband, but you can't necessarily get Krishna. And Lord Shiva is not necessarily in that position to make a kind of arrangement for the gopis to meet in the way that they wanted to meet with Krishna. And Katyayani is Yogamaya. So they're praying like that for Krishna to become their husband. And that prayer is there in the Bhagavatam. Our sort of direction is to try to get somehow or another our connection with Krishna is only possible through Srimati Radharani. And to get to Srimati Radharani, then we continue to practice devotional service, particularly serving Krishna consciousness movement, and developing that real mood of being able to serve her servants, her associates, and so on. Das, as I was explaining earlier to somebody, if you want to look at the moon with your eyes, then it's pretty small. Even if it's big, it's only looks. But if you look through a telescope, then you can see a lot. And telescope has one lens, two lenses, all these lenses. And the more lenses there are, the closer it gets. So similarly, as we see Krishna through devotees, the more devotees that we see Krishna through, the closer he gets. And the more we can actually get to see of Krishna or of Srimati Radharani. And that's the whole principle of Guru Parampara, that Guru Parampara that we have here is also continues on in the spiritual world, except of course there people are not Guru in the official sense, but still there are those who are serving others who are serving others. They don't need an official role to be Guru because they have a role, a relationship of attachment or affection. So the rules and the regulations and the obligation for serving spiritual master is not there. So similarly, we need to be clear that we're seeing Krishna through the telescope, or we're trying to see Krishna with our eyes. And when you see Krishna with our eyes, then there'll be very little. If we can, just a minute, I got Niranjan Maharaj communicating to me from the door down the hall. He wants to take rest. He needs to leave at 3:30. Okay. Returning back here. Okay, I had to write to him. Niranjan Maharaj went away for some treatment, and by the time he came back, I couldn't stay up. I had to take rest, and then I've been busy all afternoon. So I just now he's leaving at 3:30 in the morning, but I'll see him in Ukraine in a couple of weeks after Radhastami. I don't know who's going to be in Ukraine. Natalia, you're going to be in Ukraine. You will go there. And Ivars. And of course, I can't see everyone's hand. Anyone else on this side? No one's going to Ukraine. Okay.
I will be. I will be there. Krishna Priya Devidasi Guru Maharaj.
Who was that?
Krishna Priya Devidasi. I will be in Ukraine.
Okay. Okay, that's good.
I heard, Guru Maharaj, that Jairad, he also, and maybe Vishwanath.
Yes, they didn't get back to me. Question is whether they'll let Vishwanath in the country. Okay.
Maharani is also planning to go, Guru Maharaj.
Say that again.
Maharani Vrinda may be going.
She's going to Ukraine. What's
Yeah.
she going to do there?
She wanted to help Nalini Kanta sell books.
Nalini Kanta is going to Ukraine.
Oh, what's her
Maybe
name?
you're talking about the wrong person.
Nishanta Leela, sorry.
Nishanta Leela's going.
Yes.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Oh, she didn't cancel her trip?
Not as of 2 days ago, she was going, Guru Maharaj.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think Shami Hari thought that she wasn't going. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, I don't know about accommodation. You need to make sure that that's arranged.
It's arranged, Guru Maharaj, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so looking through the telescope, and ultimately we look through the telescope with our ears, we hear, and to be quite frank with you, I'm really tired, if you haven't noticed. And you know, cars wear out, even good cars wear out after a while. Pundrik, you're smiling over there. We're talking about old cars. Are you sympathizing?
I'm empathizing, Guru Maharaj.
Yes. Yeah, it's not the same. It's not the same, and you can't know it until you're there, but you're guaranteed that you will be there. That's for sure. Only Krishna stays eternally young. Okay, something else?
Siddharth Prabhu had a question. He's on the train now, so he can ask.
No. Who's on the train? No, I'm not going to talk to someone on the train. Go ahead.
Okay, Adokshaja Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Guru Maharaj?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wondered, you were saying the last time about the holy name that we should.
Where are you?
That Lord Chaitanya was.
Where are you?
Sorry. Oh,
Where
sorry.
are
Adokshaja Krishna from.
But where are you?
Oh, sorry. I'm in Glasgow right now at our center, Om Sweet Om.
Oh, you're doing book distribution there.
No, we were collecting around the shops in East Kilbride, and so now we've headed over, and we're doing like a talk tonight. So I've just come out, and Raghunath is taking care of it.
Oh, this is the center.
Yeah, that's our our logo there, Home Sweet Home.
Uh-huh. Very nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, and the restaurant is downstairs?
Yeah, yeah. Grill Guru, it's called.
Uh-huh. Okay, go ahead.
So Lord Chaitanya says we should chant in a humble state of mind. So how do you do that? How do you go into a humble state of mind if you're a very proud person? Then what's the process for getting yourself into a humble state of mind before you start chanting?
Well, not before you start chanting. It's a humble state of mind constantly. You're constantly being and trying to be in a humble state of mind. When you reach Srimad Bhagavatam, then you got a real perspective as to who you are in terms of what an insignificant thing we are, and how foolish we are to get distracted and fallen into the material world. And then if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, then you read about who are the real devotees. And that gives us an idea that we're really, someone's got the microphone. That we've really got, oh, that you're the one who's the microphone on. You got to turn your microphone up. And that it really, we're really quite far away from being what a real devotee is meant to be like. So if we compare ourselves, or if we see devotees like Haridas Thakur, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Navadvip associates, his associates in Jagannath Puri, these are very extraordinary souls. Gaurangera Sangamagi, Nitya Siddha. They're all eternal liberated souls. And when we're in the association of those eternally liberated souls by hearing, then it really puts into perspective where we are and also where we're not. And that should make us feel us humble. If it doesn't, then you really got problems. Then you may have to wait until things like old age and disease make you humble. They do. So, but it's not something that you do, all right, now, I'm just about to sit down and chant my japa, so I should do something to feel humble. That doesn't work. Our whole life and our whole psychology has to be adjusted so that we're always in the right frame of mind, regardless of what it is that we're doing. And we may be doing a lot of things, engaging in a lot of different activities, but the perspective always has to be that this is service, and we're the servant of the servant of the servant, that we're insignificant, and if we're in this world, we have nothing to be proud of, because we're fools. Otherwise, we would never come to the material world. So we need to keep that perspective, not to start thinking I'm someone, but just to really understand how I'm no one. And but that requires regularly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and as I mentioned, studying Prabhupada's books, Chaitanya Charitamrita, so that gives us a proper perspective as to what life is like. But that has to be a constant cultivation. The holy name we will not be able to be humble before chanting if that's just something we want to do for a quickie 10 minutes session. It's like a workout session before I start chanting Hare Krishna. To be humble, it has to be that, and it even has to be that when I'm out on Sankirtan. I'm on Sankirtan and I'm distributing books, but still I recognize I'm doing this as a servant. And of course, book distribution is good to make you humble, unless for some reason you're really, really good at it, then you can get all puffed up. Yeah, I think one thing you're all seeing videos. I think the benefit of the video is that we get to see each other. One important thing of the video is that no one's moving around. When you get, 30 screens and everyone's moving around, it becomes really, really distracting. Then it becomes questionable, what's the use of having a video? And everybody seeing each other, at least I'm seeing 25 people at a time. So if everyone starts moving around and everyone's either computers or telephones are moving around, it becomes very distracting. It's hard for me to focus. But without that humility, and humility is defined like that, as one actually feels worthless, even though you may be very, very qualified. In fact, they are very qualified, and still one feels worthless. Something else? Is there anything else, Parshana? I was waiting something to sort of light my fire.
Yeah, I don't have any more names on the list, but
I have a question, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. Yeah, I did Guru Prabhu, and just now Dalini Thai Prabhu asked. So if Dalini Thai Prabhu, do you want to ask your question?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
My question is, we know from various scriptures that the soul is 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair, and seated as in a machine made of the material energy. So my question is, when the soul is liberated from the material body and goes back to Godhead, does it then enter into a spiritual body in the same tradition, in that it's like seated in a vehicle made of the spiritual energy?
Well, I've not read anything to that effect. Every morning we're singing that Angani Yasya Sakalandriya Vritti, that every part, that Krishna is his body. And it isn't that, something sitting in Krishna's spiritual body, and that Krishna is that soul within the body, the spiritual body. So similarly, the living entity, I've never read that there's such a thing as a living entity sitting inside a body made of spirit, because the living entity is spirit and the body is spirit. So just logically, how could they stay separate? Here they're staying separate because they're a different substance. So one is material and one is spiritual. The spirit still manifests throughout the body by consciousness, and therefore we can see that the material body is conscious. It's actually the soul that's conscious, but that's the extent of the soul. But it's like if you have the spiritual body is the body of the soul. How it's acquired, different people have different opinions. Some say that Krishna's associates give a body. Others say that Krishna. Others say it's latent within the soul itself. But then, of course, there may be different. That may imply different things. So it's one of these topics that is most likely falls into the inconceivable category, and something that requires higher level of Krishna consciousness to understand, if at all it's understandable. I don't know that the Bhagavatam describes it. Brihad Bhagavatam certainly doesn't. When Gopakumar attains a spiritual body, his material body just transforms into spirit. He gets the same body. There's no further discussion on what it is. Of course, the nature of Brihad Bhagavatam, the philosophical direction it takes is quite sort of unidirectional, and Chaitanya Charitamrita, I don't think it discusses those. I haven't really read. Maybe somewhere in Sandarbhas, if someone looks around, but I haven't studied them from that perspective to know. But I would say that no, I just from everything I learned conceptually and logically that there's a soul inside a spiritual body, and that the two are different from each other. That would be an interesting concept, but nothing's impossible in the spiritual realm. But that would be different than at least anything I've thought up to now. But then that's nothing new, because I'm getting a new understanding of things all the time. So you could do research on that.
Yeah, because the idea of the soul being 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair, then how could everybody have such a body in the spiritual world that's 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair?
Well, the whole spiritual world fits inside of your body. So when you're talking about size becomes really irrelevant. The whole spiritual world is just inside of a quarter of Vrindavan and Loy Bazaar. The whole spiritual world is there. So how does that work? Well, that's the inconceivable nature. And you know, everything is in Krishna, and along with everything, Krishna is within everything. So he says, Aham Atma Godakesha Sarva Bhutashtra. He says, I'm the soul within the soul. Well, but then the Krishna is within us. And meanwhile, everything, including all the material and spiritual universes, are what's inside in Krishna. So size is an immaterial thing. Size is just meant to say that it's small. But it has immeasurable power, and that power needs to be released. Today I was reading Bhagavatam, and Jad Bharat gives this very nice analogy. He says in a lamp, if the wick is not properly adjusted, and if you've tried lighting ghee lamps and other things like that, except for electrical lamps, then you know that you have to get the wick. If the ghee isn't in a lamp, if the wick is not adjusted properly, then the whole lamp, the whole covering of the lamp becomes black, and the light of the lamp itself, the flame, doesn't come through because everything is all black. So it becomes corrupted. Hardly anything comes through. So he says, similarly, the living entity, when the mind is not properly adjusted, in other words, when the mind is not always thinking about Krishna, but when the mind and engaged in service, but when the mind is distracted into material affairs, then it covers the whole lamp of our perception of how we see the things, with all of this dirt, all of these insignificant things that we call reality that have no real substance. It's just lamp black, what it's called. So, but if you adjust the mind, in other words, if the mind is properly adjusted, and if you adjust the mind to chant and hear about Krishna, then all of a sudden the energy of the soul, in other words, and the real function of the soul, then can shine through. Interesting example. Very, very, very nice. And it's just one verse. You have to catch it. I'm just looking. Yeah. When the mind becomes unattached to material enjoyment, it becomes the cause of liberation. When the flame in a lamp burns the wick improperly, the lamp is blackened. But when the lamp is filled with ghee and is burning properly, there's bright illumination. Similarly, when the mind is absorbed in material sense gratification, it causes suffering. And when detached from material sense gratification, it brings about the original brightness of Krishna consciousness. It's just half a verse. You have to study Bhagavatam closely. So yes, and that's whether that's a real statement or not, or it's actually just meant to give some kind of analogous statement that's meant to give us a perspective of how small really the soul is, and yet at the same time how powerful it is, because it's moving this body. When the soul leaves this body, there's no energy for the body to function. And that's a very, very interesting idea. Although I don't relate so much to that example, but that's exactly what we do. If we have a question like that, then you go along and start studying. You got Folio, and you can just start putting in keywords, or barring that, you go to books themselves and you look into the index, or you should know the books so that you know where to look for things and see if you can follow up on some particular subject matter. And that becomes extremely interesting, because you find that one thing leads to another, and understanding of certain things requires some preliminary understanding, and so on. It doesn't just all happen just like that. And that's our duty. That's what we should be doing as devotees. That when we have some particular point of interest, a question that we want to really know an answer, and not just an answer. Okay, Shivaram Swami is going to give an answer on Zoom in 15 minutes. But actually, all right, I have an interest in this particular thing. Well, what about humility? Where do I find humility? What about, what is the spiritual body like? So humility will be easier to answer than the spiritual body one. And so then I do research, and then I study, and I make notes, and I try to put everything together into a real picture that defines for me, gives me actually the answer. And then I can take that answer and say, well, this is my understanding. Is this understanding correct? So it's that's what it means by reading or studying. Is that if somewhere along the line you start in, and you have some point of interest, so you start in on something that's of interest to you, and you see where Shastra takes you. And usually there will be some things that you have to follow up on in advance, or other things that you need to know to understand this. Those become very interesting. You can easily get sidetracked there. But what you end up knowing is you end up getting a good grasp of a certain area or a certain part of our philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And it allows you to see things in depth. So that we're going, not just getting some kind of mantra-like answers, pat answers to questions, but seeing what's going all the way down to the bottom. What's the real depth and the ultimate bottom, or the resolution, or the deepest that I can go in understanding a particular subject matter. And that's Siddhanta Bodhya Chitta. That is what is very enticing for the intelligence. It's very good. It cultivates the intelligence. It makes us more inspired. We go deeper like that. and we should. That's something that we should be doing. We shouldn't be satisfied just with just getting some general answers to things, but we should try to go deep into the substance of Krishna consciousness, because ultimately Krishna consciousness is in itself very deep. Well, what about, nectar of devotion being Srimati Radharani's form? Anyway, read about it, put in nectar of devotion, see what the acharyas say. There are commentaries, Vishwanath and Jiva Goswami and others who are commenting. Have they said anything? What have they said? We try to work on these things, and they become, that's how someone becomes learned. And, Ek Vedi, Do Vedi, Tri Vedi, Chatur Vedi, that's how there were certain scholars who were learned in one of the Vedas, in 2 Vedas, in 3 Vedas, in 4 Vedas. Some are learned in the Upanishads, some are learned, who knows, others the ritualists. So they had some area of specialty. Our specialty is bhakti. And we want to know those things that are in relationship to bhakti yoga. And therefore we should study those things. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the book that helps you, qualifies you ultimately for entering into the science of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, of how to really apply all of those things. It's a textbook. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, of all of our books, is actually in itself a textbook and a systematic step-by-step development type textbook, which none of our other books are. Our other books are more. Srimad Bhagavatam is really, on that sense, also fulfilling a philosophical purpose, which is it's commenting on Vedanta Sutra. So it's establishing our Siddhanta and what is our philosophy. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu doesn't talk about our philosophy. It talks about how to practice bhakti. Everything's a given. Same thing as with Brihad Bhagavatamrita. It's already given that Krishna is through Bhagavan Swayam. It's already given that there's a spiritual world. All those things are all already established. Bhagavatam establishes all those things. And Bhagavatam establishes Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Bhagavatam goes through and describes many, many other truths and philosophical points. So it's, in one sense, very different than the nectar of devotion. And that's why Gaudiya Vaishnavas, very often when they talk about Bhagavatam, they talk about the 10th canto. And it's the 10th canto that it's actually about devotees, and specifically about Krishna, and elaborately about Krishna and Krishna's pastimes. And then even then, Gaudiya Vaishnavas are selective about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. So they play a different role. And then, of course, Chaitanya Charitamrita is very important because aside from getting a mention, Lord Chaitanya doesn't play a role either in the Bhagavatam. but he's extremely important for us. We need to understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's identity. So therefore we have Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Chaitanya Charitamrita, because for us to practice Krishna consciousness, we need to go through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Or rather, we see everything through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers and his disciples. How Chaitanya Mahaprabhu experienced bhakti, devotion, is how we should, of course, taking into consideration that he's Krishna. So what he's experiencing, we can't experience, but we need to follow him. We need to follow how he does things also. And how he does things, and how the mood of devotional service, at least the aspiration of it, is there by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then his other associates. Then we see how actually they're engaged in devotion. Okay, we're sort of coming to an end. I came to an end about 3 hours ago. But dead elephants are still useful. So, well, I don't know when we're going to have another meeting. 2 weeks. Next week is, oops. I'm looking at the calendar.
Next Friday.
Yeah, next week, of course, is Varashtami, and after that I'm in Ukraine, so there's no way anything's happening there. And, well, Thursday, maybe Thursday 19th, Friday, I can't do because I already have an outreach retreat in New Brajadam, and our guests are arriving then.
Saturday possible, Gurmas?
No, it's a whole weekend.
Okay.
It's a whole weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they leave Monday, I think. And then following Thursday, I'm off to Istanbul, and then I don't have time for anything there.
So 19th?
Huh?
So should we stick to 19th?
19th, yeah, looks like that's doable. So same time?
Same time on the 19th, Gurmas.
Okay, maybe I'll be more awake, and well, questions are always the substantial thing. As you can see, we ran out of questions. I don't know, I got some devotees here, but they look as tired as I am, because they've all been on Sankirtan. And okay, you need to go take rest. We're about to fall over. And yeah, there's more to having an exciting meeting than me talking for an hour. And if I prepare on a topic and do something and talk on that, then I can go, but I don't have time for that. So how to make things dynamic, I leave it to you to think about, rather than just sort of everyone sits back in different couches and different poses, and then they're just waiting for the Sri Ram Swami show. and I'm supposed to perform. That's the way it feels on this side.
Okay.
So how do things become a little more interactive? How a little more exciting, considering that I don't have. These are for me just I just walk on the stage and I just do it, whatever comes spontaneously, and which isn't necessarily always the most substantial thing, especially if I'm really tired. And it's 8:30, so by 8:30 I'm pretty tired. Okay, but that's something that you could think about. And we've got our time, that's 3 weeks down the road. And then I come to the UK, so I guess we'll meet up sometime. I have to still work out my exact work time and filming times. But aside from that, I think once I go to England, I don't think I do any conferences or anything like that. Well, once I go to India, excuse me. Otherwise I won't be able to do what I want to do, which is just right. Okay, so Radha Govinda, I'll see you tomorrow at this time. And I spoke to Ram Bhadra, and then he said he was sending some pictures, because I have been able to look at the internet as to what they are. Here's the pictures. Oh yeah, that's right, I remember. Looks like here are some of the pictures that he sent me.
It's a nice place, Guru Maharaj. Please stay with us.
Yeah, I see the swimming pool.
It's all yours, Guru Maharaj. It's just for you.
Looks enticing. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, if you want, next time want some tips on organizing, you can talk to Nishinga Krishna. And he'll explain. We're just doing afterwards about the same number of devotees. There's a lot of advanced planning goes into the process. Okay, so we'll meet tomorrow. We'll meet with everyone else in 3 weeks. Hare Krishna, and we'll then be in touch again. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anyone who's coming for Radhastami, I'll see you then. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Shri Guru Maharaj ki jai.
Hare Krishna.